This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of April 30th, 2023. Content authenticity statement. 100% of this newsletter is written by me, the human, with no contribution from AI. If there ever is a contribution generated by AI, it will be prominently disclosed. What's on my mind this week? A marketing antidote for large language models. This week, let's talk about a specific aspect of large language models when it comes to marketing. Let's dig into being notable and whether or not a large language model like GPT-4 knows who you are. Here's a bit of background. I had the pleasure this week of guest teaching at Harvard Business School at the invitation of my friend and colleague, Christina Inge. Christina's a force in her own right. She's her marketing textbook, is one of the standards for universities to use for teaching analytics to students in America and beyond. During the class, I mentioned how large language models like GPT-4 and interfaces like ChatGPT and Bing will impact SEO, that they will consume a lot of unbranded search and informational queries. As part of the exercise, we did a quick search for Christina on Bard, Bing, and ChatGPT. Bing successfully found her, but Bard and ChatGPT came up empty. Now, I've done similar tests on myself. Bard assembled a garbled and deeply incorrect version of who I am, while Bing and ChatGPT successfully identify me and my background. Why? What's the difference? The difference is in content mass. How much content mass you, yourself, your company, your brand has determines how well a large language model does or does not know you. This is one of the new battlegrounds for marketers to deal with in the age of conversational AI and generative AI. How well are we known by the machines that will be taking on more and more search tasks? If you're notable, the machines know you. They recommend you. They talk about you. In many ways, it's no different than classical SEO, except there are fewer ways to earn referral traffic from large language models than there are classical search engines. But what if you're not notable? What if the machines don't know who you are? Well, the answer is become notable. That's a bit glib, not super helpful, right? It's a bit oversimplified. So let's break this down into a recipe you can use. First, large language models are trained principally on text. This can be text in regular content like blog posts, newsletters that are published on the web, and what you'd expect from common text, but it can also include things like academic papers, GitHub code, chats on Reddit, YouTube subtitles, etc. We know from published papers that the training data set named the Pile, published by Eleuthera AI, contains a wide variety of text sources, right? Here's a whole bunch. Pile, CC, PubMed, books, Open Web Text Archive, GitHub, Free Law, Stack Exchange. List goes on for quite some time. The Common Crawl, which is called Pile CC here, it contains much of the public web, especially things like news sites. Books3 is a database of published books. YouTube subtitles, unsurprisingly, is a large corpus of YouTube subtitles. There's also academic paper sites like Archive, tons of other data sources. This data set is used to train Eleuthera's models, like GPT-J6b and GPT-Neo-X 20b, as well as the newly released Stable LM model. OpenAI's GPT models, they almost certainly use something similar but larger in size. Do you see here the opportunities to be found? Certainly having content on the public web helps, right? Having published academic papers, having books, having YouTube videos with subtitles you provide, all that helps create this content mass, creates the conditions for which a large language model will detect you as an entity and the things you want to be associated with. In other words, you want to be everywhere you can be. So how do you do this? How do you be all these places? Well, it starts with what you have control over. Do you have a blog? Do you have a website? Do you have an account on Medium or Substack or any of these other platforms that's visible to the public without a paywall? If you do, start publishing. Start publishing content that associates you with the content and the topics that you care about, and publish anywhere that isn't gated. For example, LinkedIn content isn't always visible if you're not logged in, so that probably wouldn't be a good first choice. Substack, that allows you to publish with no gating. Obviously, be pushing video on YouTube like this one, right? With captions. with captions that you provide so that they're correct, so they get the right words, right? So that you get the words published, you need to be published associated with your name. Second, to the extent you can, try to reach out and be more places. Someone wants you as a guest on their podcast, unless you have a compelling reason to say no, do it. Someone wants you to write for their website, write for them, but be sure you're loading up your writing with your brand as much as you're permitted to do so. Get a local news inquiry from the East Podunk Times, do it. Be everywhere you can be. You want to be a guest on someone's live stream, show up with bells on, right? Somebody invites you to join their live stream, their YouTube, their Twitch, their whatever. Be there. Now, you don't need to be, a popular social media personality with a team of 31 people following you around all day long, documenting your every move. But you do need to be creating useful, usable content at whatever scale you practically and reasonably can. What does the blueprint for that content look like? YouTube's Hero Hub Help content strategy from 2014 is the way to go, right? You have a few big, infrequent pieces, right? The big ideas. Then you have a regular cadence of high quality content, and then an avalanche of tactical, helpful content as much as you can manage. It's sort of the why, what, how, right? Hero Hub Help. Again, this is not news, right? This content strategy is a decade old, but it has renewed importance because it helps you create content faster and in a bigger scale. For example, with Trust Insights, my big hero piece this quarter has been the new generative AI talk, right, which you can download and click on. That's the piece putting a lot of effort into promoting. The hub content is stuff like the free ChatGPT prompt guide, right? No strings attached. You can download it and boom, off you go. And our help content are the endless pieces of blog, podcast, and newsletter content, right? Just cranking out content all the time. That's an example of the plan in action. The same is true of my personal stuff. My big talks are my hero content. They're on YouTube. The hub content is stuff like this newsletter every week. And the help content are the daily videos, like the daily video content. That's how you create content mass. But you can't do it alone. I mean, you can, but you shouldn't. Let's talk about the industry that I left, the industry that I spent 5 years and change working in, public relations. Public relations, and this is not hyperbole, public relations is probably the most important discipline you're not using right now. Not enough. If you and your company have the resources, you need somebody pitching you to be everywhere, someone lining you up for media opportunities, for bylines, for placements, for commentary, for that 2 minutes on the news, right? Anything you can do to get published in as many places as you can be. Right? If you're on TV with closed captions, great. Think about when someone introduces you on TV. And next, we're going to talk to Christopher Penn of Trust Insights about generative AI. Chris, tell us in 30 seconds what you need to know. Right? Guess what? Just in that intro, there's the words I want associated with me. Right? So if you have the resources, if you have a PR team, you have a PR agency, be everywhere. If you don't have the resources, you need to do it yourself. But the discipline of PR is probably the antidote to obscurity in large language models, as long as it's done well. We know, without a doubt, that news and publications comprise a good chunk of these large language models' training data sets. So the more places you are, the bigger your content mass, the more they will associate you and your brand with the topics and language you care about. Now, this all sounds great, but what if I'm wrong? What if this doesn't work? What if you do this in a year's time, GPT-4 isn't recommending you as much as you think you should? Oh no, you're literally everywhere and on people's minds, right? That's the wonderful thing about this overall strategy. It works for machines, but it also works for people. Even if it had literally no impact on the machines, which we know it will because we know how they train the machines, right? We have these academic papers that show us what's in these data sets. But even if it didn't, even if that wasn't the case, it would still benefit you and your business, right? Focusing on mindshare, on brand, on being everywhere you can be. It'll help you no matter what, AI or no AI. The bottom line is, at whatever scale you can afford, be it time and money, be as many places in public as you can be. If you want to win in large language models and in marketing, be as present as you can be. Be everywhere that you can be. Right? It's just like that old, it's a paraphrase of the old U.S. Army slogan. They used to say, be all you can be. And we're saying, be everywhere you can be. What else we got in the news this week? Besides, of course, Google Analytics. 60 days to go before Google Analytics 4 is the only analytics solution that will collect website analytics. Universal Analytics turning off July 1. If you have not already taken the course for GA4, go take it. This week, the piece of content I would recommend, did a live stream this week with Katie and John. It's over on the YouTube channel, where we demoed how to fine-tune a large language model like GPT-3 for your own purposes to make it sound just like you. Had a fun time making an artificial version of Katie, so check that out. It was a good walkthrough of how you do these things. We also talked this week about content for influencer audiences, managing brand expectations for influencers, a lot of B2B influence stuff from last week's SAP conference, which was terrific. We also have jobs this week, tons. So I'm just going to read the first 5. The rest are in the newsletter. Data engineer at Canva, director of product marketing at Datadog, director of social at Figma, field marketing manager at Datadog, growth manager of strategy and insights at Asana, and like a dozen more. So lots of hiring going on, which is good to see. In other news around the web, we have people asking if Blue Sky could supersede Twitter. So Blue Sky has been created by Jack Dorsey, the former creator of Twitter, and we'll see. Digiday reports that publishers are pulling marketing budgets away from Twitter under the new ownership. Gee, I wonder why. It has been a hot mess over there. Let's see what else we got in the news. The EU has set a deadline for the big tech companies in the USA to comply with their new data security regulations, and if they don't do it, they will be banned from the EU, which will be very, very interesting. We have more SEO tips, lots and lots of AI stuff. Scott Brinker had a great piece this week on the second-order effects of generative AI in MarTech and marketing. Worth reading that piece. Real-time analytics, improving ESG risk management, some stuff from IBM. And then in the fun news, Huberman Labs toolkit for sleep if you're having trouble sleeping. Is a really useful toolkit there. And Disney sues Governor DeSantis of Florida over the theme park takeover. Without getting political, let me just say this. If you have a choice in life between, say, like swimming in a tank of piranhas and facing off against a Disney lawyer, choose the piranhas. Right? Disney lawyers are vicious. They are very, very powerful. They are extremely good at what they do. And you generally don't want to tangle with them. And if you are a lawyer from Disney, this is said with respect and awe and fear. Upcoming events. B2B Ignite in Chicago coming up this month, actually May. ISBM in Chicago in September. MAYCON in July in Cleveland. Content Marketing World in DC in September. And Marketing Props B2B Forum here in October in Boston. So lots of great events coming up. Hope to see you at them. That is the news for this week. Thank you for being here. As always, thank you for tuning in, and look forward to hearing what you have to say about your antidotes for large language models. Take care, and I'll talk to you next time. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.